So I'm Madeleine Molyneaux. I'm the producer of IFO, Identified Flying Object. It's a film by Kevin Jerome Everson, who's been at Punta de Vista before with features and shorts. And this is a film that was financed by the Wexner Art Center in Columbus, Ohio, which is quite close by Mansfield, Ohio, where the film is set. And it's part of a series of films that he's making about people, places, objects, and strange occurrences in Mansfield, Ohio, which is the Midwest of the United States. And this is actually, the transcript is absolutely true. It's based on a factual account of a helicopter, an Army helicopter, in the 70s that saw a series of occurrences in the sky of lights and sort of tries to imagine what might have happened.
My name's Albert Thomas from Mansfield, Ohio. Born June 16, 1958, and drove a cab for like 7 years. And one night I pick up a customer and we're riding around 10 o'clock at night. I'm taking her to work and we see these two lights in the sky and they're like side by side. And
well, I think, there's many layers to this, and I think Kevin said it quite eloquently when he finished the film, and that is that I think people try to read, especially if he's a black experimental filmmaker from the United States, kind of an endangered species. He makes films about black Americans and the African diaspora, and about daily life. So I think when people think about, like you say, UFOs or this kind of fantastic science fiction, maybe the taboo is that it's somehow, I don't know if you meant like it's somehow fantastic or it doesn't have this basis. And I think for him, he was very interested in not necessarily being dragged down by what happens, let's say, in the ground on Earth, but looking above. And there's a lot of talk, and of course he could speak more to this, but there is a lot of sort of discussion, I think, around Afrofuturism and Afro-surrealism, which is something that I think he engages in sort of obliquely. And I know, especially with a film like Black Panther coming out, there's this idea that you can sort of imagine the context of certain conditions and how it affects sort of black bodies and black American life. So I think those are some of the maybe contexts of the film. As a producer, Kevin and I have worked together since 2005 and have made 8 features and probably over 75 shorts. He's extremely prolific. As a producer, I just get out of the way and let him do his thing. My role really comes in once the film is done to get it out in the world and to iterate it both in the art world and put it in that context, the festival world, and now we're exploring this idea of actually starting to get it out digitally. Because he has films which are part of big releases and box sets, but because there's so many films, I think something like a streaming platform, I know in Spain there's Filmin, and there's Mubi, and there's different ways, I think, to get the films out.
On October 18th, 1973, at approximately 10:30 p.m., a UH-1H helicopter of the United States Army Reserve.
Yes, he shoots, he's been shooting in HD as well, but this was shot in 16 millimeter, but everything is finished digitally. So, for instance, what we're showing here is a file. So again, it's been really amazing to see at Punta de Vista this devotion to projecting original format. If Kevin made prints of the films, which at least in the United States is very cost prohibitive, and he makes so many films that he doesn't make prints of all of them. So in terms of the digital diffusion of the film, that's not such a difficult proposition. I think the more difficult proposition is the context of the film and shorts in general. How do you put them together? In America, I know they're exploring different ways to package shorts. So for instance, you'll have maybe 5 to 10 shorts all in a theater. But again, he's dealing with something that is very unknown. And I watched it again today, and every time I see it, it becomes more and more mysterious, I think. So a lot of it for me also, and I think a festival like Punta de Vista does this really well, is how the film is curated in a program. So the fact that it followed a film by our friend Deborah Stratman, and it preceded Jorge's film, which takes place in the Azores, and it all had to do in a way with strange phenomena and basically bodies in a certain place and time. And I just thought that was brilliant. So, that's all about the curators here at the festival for sure.
The last altitude he noted was 1,700 feet. Just as a collision appeared imminent, the unknown light halted in its westward course and assumed a hovering relationship above and in front of the helicopter.
In terms of kind of the creative vision and I think the many layers that exist in the film, that is very much, that's purely driven by Kevin. And, he's first and foremost a formal artist. So he thinks first about form. And he also is trained in photography and sculpture, and street photography and sculpture. So I think you see those elements in the films. And so when he puts them together, he often writes scripts or comes up with scenarios, but so much of it is when he's looking through the viewfinder. And I think that made me always very excited to hear about his new work, because I knew that even though he could maybe send me the outline, let's say I was trying to raise money for the film or I wanted to present it to a festival to get them excited about the new film, I always knew there'd be an element of, or not even an element, but a huge part of the film would be unknown until it was him looking through the viewfinder and seeing what he found. Because he makes many of his films in the town he grew up in, which is Mansfield, Ohio, in the center of the United States, you often see a linkage between people featured in the film. So, for instance, one of the young men in the film is the son of a woman who was in his film Ears, Nose, and Throat, that played quite a bit in international festivals and at the Tate Museum and so forth. So the voiceover of the woman who's reading the UFO is a woman named Carmen Higginbotham, who's a professor and teaches with Kevin at University of Virginia, and she's also the voice in a film from 2008 called According To. So you start seeing recurrent themes, and in a way like a sculptor or painter might reuse materials. He uses his family, he uses neighbors, and he, in a way, I think this was a great quote that he once gave about a film called BZV, which was a film he made in Congo, in Brazzaville, Africa, in Congo, Africa. And he was saying that he shot that film as if he was in his hometown, right? And then he goes to his hometown and he shoots it as if he's out of the country, perhaps in another continent or in another planet. So I love the fact that, in a way, IFO is made in Mansfield, but it could be, somewhere in outer space.
The white light maintained its intensity even at its distance, and finally, according to Coyne and Healy, it appeared to execute a decisive 45-degree turn to the right. Healy reported that he watched the object moving westward for a couple of minutes.
Sometimes when I have to explain to artists, why I work with only certain people, and also that it's a choice. And I think I have to respond to the work, both sort of viscerally, immediately, but also be able to defend it. And Kevin, I think, is pretty much, one of the artists that I have worked with who I don't think there's been a single film that I haven't somehow fallen in love with. Sometimes very different from his feeling. I mean, there are certain films that he makes them and he discards them, or he doesn't want them out, whereas I'll have a different idea about them. So I think as a producer, it's all context, it's all subjective, but I think there's something almost that I should not be able to describe about the work, but I should be able to defend it. So I think that's a quality of great art. And I'm always very moved, I think, from people whose expression is very, I guess, I don't know if confidence is the right word, but is very self-assured and you have a very good sense of that when they've looked through the viewfinder, they know what they're looking for. They may discover something on the way, but they're very concentrated on form. So in a way, I'm also looking for people that are as much a formalist as I am.